Here we back. We back. Now, today, man, we're going to be talking about the collapse of the Songhai Empire, right? One of the greatest and most famous civilizations ever established by the black man in the history of humanity. And today we're going to talk about how the collapse of the Songhai Empire is actually directly connected to the collapse of the black man's economic and geopolitical power, the black man's status and prestige on the world stage, and overall, it led to the black man's downfall on a global level. So let's talk about it. Now, as you can see, take a look up on the screen, the Songhai Empire at the height of its power stretched over a large landmass, right? Like I told you, one of the largest, if not the largest, kingdom in the history of the black race. Now, I know when it comes to history, we like to focus on Egypt or ancient Kemet, which is fine. I'm not throwing shade at ancient Kemet, but we must never forget of the black man's power and prestige in other areas of the continent, right? The black man was not only shining in ancient Kemet, the black man was shining all over the continent. But when I say that, I'm not minimizing the legacy of ancient Kemet, because we never gonna do that. All I'm doing is simply glorifying our greatness and prestige that we displayed in other regions of the continent as well, whether that be Central Africa, West Africa, South Africa. Because when it comes to the topic of who are the ancient rulers of ancient Nubia, ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, we already know the Europeans and the Arabs love claiming that for themselves. But we know for a fact, and it's undisputed, no debate, that it was the black man who was ruling over the ancient civilizations, the world famous civilizations of Central Africa, West Africa, and South Africa. They tried to eliminate the black man's glorious history in East Africa and North Africa, but they could never do that when it comes to the other regions of the continent. So today we're gonna get into it, man. The collapse of the Songhai Empire. Now, as you can see, take a look up on the screen. In the 7th century, right? In the year like 600, you know what I mean? Long time ago. The black man been outside, right? The Songhai was established back in the 7th century. See, the black man been doing it for a very long time, man. Let's get it. The Songhai state emerges at Gao, right? Now, Gao, I believe that is a city in present day Mali, if I'm not mistaken, right? I believe in the southeastern region of the country. Now, the Songhai state emerges at Gao in the 7th century, damn near 1500 years ago. I told you, man, the black man been outside for a very long time. Now let's continue. Now, the Songhai doesn't gain its independence from Mali until the 1400s, right? Until the 15th century. Originally, I believe it started kind of like a trading center or economic center, and then it became like a vassal state of Mali, essentially a colony. I wouldn't say a colony, but basically a territory under the hegemony of the ruling elites of the Mali Empire. And then later on, it would gain its independence and become a dominant power in the region. Now, let's talk about the ancient city of Gao. Let's get into it. For much of its history, Gao was an important commercial center involved in the trans-Saharan trade. In the 9th century, external Arabic writers described Gao as an important regional power. Like I told you, bro, them Arabs, they been knew about the black man, bro. The black man's name was ringing bells back in those days. Everybody knew what the black man was about. Everybody knew the black man had the money and power and the prestige and the beautiful women. Why do you think it's such extensive literature that has been written down by both the Arabs and the Europeans, and all they writing about is the black man, bro? Oh man, the black man got the diamonds. The black man got the gold. The black man got the beautiful land and the beautiful, tropical climate. Man, the black man got the trade routes. The black man got the salt. Man, the black man got this. The black man got that. Bro, there's whole entire memoirs written down from European travelers, Arab travelers, and all they're writing about is the black man, bro. I'm telling you, man, the black man been outside for a very long time. And the black man's name was ringing bells in these streets. Now let's continue. Now, when it comes to the Songhai Empire, you got to understand that the Songhai Empire was a continuation of previous dominant powers in the region. For example, when the Mali Empire collapsed, the Songhai Empire rose in its place. But just like how the Ghana Empire, the ancient Ghana Empire collapsed, the Mali Empire rose in its place, right? And when I talk about the ancient Ghana Empire, we're not talking about modern day Ghana, right? The ancient Ghana Empire, we're talking about, modern day Mali, Mauritania, Senegal, things like that, right? We're not talking about modern day Ghana. Ancient Ghana and modern Ghana are two different things. Now, before we get to Songhai and Mali, we got to go back to ancient Ghana. Take a look up on the screen. The Ghana Empire was a West African classical to post-classical era West Sahelian empire based in modern-day southeastern Mauritania and western Mali. Now, this is off topic, but this reminds me of something I seen the other day on social media. This lady right here, she had posted something I believe she's from Mali, actually. And she had said this: "Here are the real owners of Mauritania, invaded by foreigners from the Satanic Gulf. The current president illegally squats on the land of our ancestors. Mauritania is not a state, it is a land that belongs to Malians. The mother of Sunni Ali is buried on this Mauritanian land, a creation of French colonization." Now, shout out to that sister. You know, she called that boy a squatter, right? She called that boy, she said, she called this booty scratcher. She said, "You are illegally squatting on the land of our ancestors." I'm telling you, man, the Arab is the black man's enemy. Now let's continue. Now, as with anything, kingdoms rise and fall, and new powers rise in their place, right? So before you get to the Mali Empire, you got to start out with the Ghana Empire. But once the Ghana Empire starts to decline, then you get other regional powers vying for supremacy, right? Take a look up on the screen. The Sosso Empire was a kingdom of West Africa that originated as a vassal of the Ghana Empire before breaking away and conquering their former overlords. Now, one thing you got to understand, brothers, you got to understand our forefathers, they operated in a different geopolitical context than we operate in today, right? So there was no Pan-Africanism back in the day. You know what I mean? Because the black man next door is more of an adversary, is more of a threat to you than a European far away in Paris or London, right? He far away, you know, he oceans away, but the black man next door, he could take my shit tomorrow. He could take everything I got tomorrow. And like I told you, for large sections of history, Africa was a center of commerce and trade, and everybody had their eyes on the continent, whether it was the days of ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet over in East Africa, or whether it was the days of ancient Mali, ancient Songhai, ancient Oyo, ancient Benin, ancient Dahomey over in West Africa, or whether it was the ancient Congo in Central Africa, or whether it was, the Zulus down in South Africa. For most of history, it's pretty much been black men, like all men, fighting for supremacy amongst each other. It wasn't until very recently where black men had to kind of understand that we're getting attacked on all angles from all sides. So it would probably be beneficial to all of us if we could, combine our foreign policy and collaborate to protect ourselves for mutual benefit. But for the most part of history, black men were fighting amongst each other, battling for regional supremacy, economic supremacy, military supremacy, just like the Europeans were, just like the Asians were, etc., just like the Arabs were, etc., etc. That's part of the human experience. And that's what you're going to see here, a common theme here in this video today. Now let's continue. The Sosso Empire was a kingdom of West Africa that originated as a vassal of the Ghana Empire before breaking away and conquering their former overlords, inhabited by the Sunni ancestors of the modern day Sosso people. The empire peaked under the reign of Soumarou Kante, who was defeated by the rising Mali Empire of Sunni Ali. So now, this is what I mean when I say our forefathers were battling for supremacy amongst each other. So as the Ghana Empire began to decline, the black men from the Sosso Empire, who were formerly under the subjugation of the black men from the Ghana Empire, they began to assert their sovereignty, right? They began, stomping their feet. They began going around knocking other black men over the head, right? They began to assert their power in the region. Now, of course, this was the same spirit of competition and warlike energy amongst black men that ultimately led to things like the slave trade centuries later. But at the same time, when you study our history, you got to remove your emotions and the modern day political context from these ancient subjects, from these ancient topics, right? These ancient stories. Sometimes you got to just sit back and just admire, the bravery of our ancestors, admire the valor of our forefathers, right? Admire the warlike energy of our ancestors. Now, let's continue. Let's talk about Soumarou Kante, also known as Sumanguru Kante. Now, the same way I admire Sunni Ali, I admire Soumarou Kante, right? Because I believe that both men, but especially Soumarou Kante, he represents the authentic spirit of the black man, fierce, proud, uncompromising. I'm standing on business, 10 toes down. I don't care what anybody else doing. I'm doing me. Now let's continue. Soumarou Kante was a 13th century king of the Sosso people. Seizing Kumbi Saleh, the capital of the recently defunct Ghana Empire, Soumarou Kante proceeded to conquer several neighboring states, including the Mandinka and what is now Mali. However, the Mandinka prince, Sunni Ali, built a coalition of smaller kingdoms to oppose him at the Battle of Kirina, defeating the Sosso and leaving Sunni Ali's new Mali Empire dominant in the region. Now, like I told you, when the Ghana Empire began to decline, because like with anything in the world, kingdoms rise and fall, so the Sosso began to flex their muscle, right? Soumarou Kante began to flex his muscle, right? Previously, he had to be under the subjugation of the Ghana Empire, but now he began to flex his muscle in the region. And then Sunni Ali came out of nowhere and knocked him over the head, right? Told him, beep, shut your dumb ass mouth, right? Knock that boy out. Now, let's continue. The Battle of Kirina was a confrontation between the Sosso king Sumaguru Kante and the Mandinka prince Sunni Ali. Sunni Ali forces roundly defeated those of Sumaguru Kante, guaranteeing the preeminence of Keita's new Mali Empire over West Africa. So now, the Ghana Empire fell, Sumaguru Kante began flexing his muscle, Sunni Ali came out of nowhere, knocked him over the head. Now, the rise of the Mali Empire in the region. Now let's continue. The exiled Mandinka prince Sunni Ali organized a coalition of smaller kingdoms to oppose the growing power of the Sosso. The opposing armies met in the Kulikoa region of what is now Mali in about 1235, right? So damn near 1,000 years ago, bro. See, the black man been outside for a very long time. Let's continue. Sunni Ali forces were victorious and marched on to raise Sosso. The date is often cited as the beginning of the Mali Empire, which would control most of West Africa for the next 2 centuries. The Mandinka military and military culture were crucial to the success of the Mali Empire. The Mandinka were early adopters of iron in West Africa, and the role of blacksmiths was one of great religious and military prestige among them. Manipulation of iron had allowed the Mandinka to spread out over the borders of modern-day Mali and Guinea by the 11th century. During this time, the Mandinka came into contact with the Soninka. After his victory in Kirina, Mansa Musa established his capital at Niani, near the present-day Mali border with Guinea. Assisted by his generals, Taramaccan being one of the most prominent, he went on to conquer other states. The lands of the old Ghana Empire were conquered. The king of Wolof was defeated by Taramaccan and his kingdom reduced to a vassal state. After defeating the former ally of Sumuru, Taramaccan ventured deep into present-day Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, and conquered them. Taramaccan was responsible for the conquest of the Senegambia. Now, when they talk about Taramaccan, they're talking about, take a look up on the screen, Taramaccan Traore, right? Which is basically one of the ancient elites of the Mali Empire, one of Sunni Ali trusted generals, right? Very powerful black man during his time. Very well-known military commander, led several campaigns for the kingdom, and was just going around knocking black men upside the head, right? He was going around West Africa, knocking other black men upside their goddamn head, knocking them on their back, burying them in the dirt. Taramaccan was going crazy back in the day, bro. He was going crazy back in the day. Now let's continue. The emperor or the Mansa was the head of the armed forces. However, Sakura seems to have been the only Mansa to have taken the field other than Sunjata. Sakura may have been involved in a previous coup in which Mansa Khalifa had been overthrown and replaced by Sunjata's grandson, Abubakar. Eventually, Sakura seized the throne for himself. Sakura appears to have been beneficial despite the political shakeup. He added the first conquest to Mali since the reign of Wali, including the former Ouagadougou provinces of Tekrur and Diara. His conquest did not stop at the boundaries of Ouagadougou, however. He campaigned into Senegal and conquered the Wolof province of Jolof, and then took the army east to subjugate the copper-producing area of Takeda. He also conquered Messina and raided Gao to suppress the first rebellion against Mali. Now, as you can see, Mansa Sakura in the late 1200s, the 13th century, going crazy, just going around knocking black men upside their head, right? As you can see, Mansa Sakura, which is going around knocking other black men upside their head, knocking them on their back. Now let's continue. Mansa Sakura was murdered on his return trip from Mecca in or near the present-day Djibouti by a Danakil warrior attempting to rob him. Now, as you can see, Mansa Sakura went out like Nipsey Hussle, right? They killed my boy in broad daylight. The same way they killed Nipsey Hussle while he was standing in front of his place of business, the same way they killed Stack Bundles while he was coming home from the club, they killed Mansa Sakura while he was coming back home from Mecca, from his Hajj from Mecca. They killed my boy. They tried to rob him. They tried to rob my boy. And they killed him when they tried to rob him. That's crazy, man. It's crazy how things like that still happen today, right? Prominent, respected black man gets killed by a bottom feeder. Now let's continue. Mali's warrior emperor not only restored the state to its former glory, but made it more powerful than ever. By the time of his murder in 1300, the Mali Empire had already stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the border of the Kanem Empire. Now I'm telling you, man, like I said, prominent black man, well-respected black man, highly accomplished black man gets murdered by a bottom feeder. Just like Young Dolph, just like in the case of Young Dolph, if you watch the murder trial for the rapper Young Dolph, he basically got killed by some local drug addicts, right? Some local, guys basically killed him so they could get money to go get high. It's crazy, man. I guarantee back in those days, it was definitely major news, international news when Mansa Musa got killed on his way home from Mecca. Now let's continue. The military culture and organization of the Mali Empire grew in power and sophistication until reaching its peak between 1250 and 1450. This period was marked by a firm, more complex system of military roles in the empire. The reasons for the changes in the Imperial Mali army are not known for certain, but it's likely that the expanding size of the state had much to do with the transformation. The territorial gains of the Mali Empire were maintained well after Sakura's death. Mansa Gao, Muhammad ibn Gao, and Abubakar II reigned in peace and prosperity over a well-guarded realm dotted with garrisons in Walata, Timbuktu, Gao, Kumbi Saleh, and many others. Right, so during this time, man, the black man was just, man, you heard what they said, man, the black man was reigning in peace and prosperity. Man, the black man was just getting money. Man, the black man was just sitting around getting money, bro. I'm telling you, the black man was getting money. The black man was having money, beautiful women. The black man was having gold. The black man was having jewelry. The black man was iced out. The black man was having trade routes. The black man was having armies. The black man was having libraries. The black man was having silk and spices and salt. The black man had mansions in Timbuktu. The black man had a fleet of camels. They were talking about the black man in Cairo and in Mecca. Man, they was going crazy. The black man was having caravans. The black man was having palaces. Telling you, man, you heard what he said. Reigning in peace and prosperity. We got to get back to it, brothers. We got to get back to it. Now let's continue. In 1312, Mansa Musa came to power and brought the empire even more fame and prestige with his legendary Hajj to Mecca. His generals added Walata and Tagaza salt mines to the empire's already impressive size. In 1325, the Mandinka general, Sagmandir, put down yet another rebellion by the Songhai in Gao. The Mali Empire was at its largest and wealthiest under Mansa Musa I, spanning over 1.29 million square kilometers. Now, as you can see, the black man commanding massive amounts of territory, right? 1.29 million square kilometers. That's like multiple European nations put together. Now let's continue. Mansa Musa built many schools, universities, and libraries in cities like Gao and Timbuktu. Using his large army, he invaded other regions and doubled the size of his territory, growing his already vast empire. It is estimated that Mali came to control half of the world's supply of salt and gold at this time. Some historians have even described Mansa Musa as the wealthiest man who has ever lived. The Mali Empire enjoyed virtually no military reverses in its first century of existence and had grown at a terrific rate in both size and wealth by the time that Ibn Battuta arrived there. However, this wealth and power may have been the reason behind more aggressive attacks by its neighbors, as well as the complacency of some of the Mansas in dealing with them. Subject peoples on the fringes of the empire slowly began to shake off the yoke of Mandinka hegemony. This happened slowly at first, but after 1450, the empire would begin to crumble very rapidly. By the 10th century, the Songhai chiefs had established Gao as a small kingdom, taking control of the people living along the trade routes. Around 1300, Gao had become prosperous enough to attract the Mali Empire's attention. Mali conquered the city, profited from Gao's trade, and collected taxes from its kings until about the 1430s. Conflict in the Malian homeland made it impossible to maintain control of Gao. Now, as you can see, for much of the 1300s, the kings of the Songhai had to pay taxes, had to pay tribute to the kings down in Mali, right? They had to pay their taxes, right? They had to, they had to check in, with the kings down in Mali. That's how it was back then. When you are the big dog, you can go around knocking other black men upside their head and tell them to pay their taxes. But on the flip side, once you on the decline, guaranteed they're going to come for their revenge. Now let's continue. Now, in the mid to late 1400s, the Mali Empire began to decline. After the death of Soliman Dama, Sunni Ali reigned from 1464 to 1492. Unlike the previous Songhai kings, Ali sought to honor the traditional religion of his people, taught to him by his mother of the Dendi people. This earned him the reputation of a tyrant by Islamic scholars. In the late 1460s, he conquered many of the Songhai Empire's neighboring states, including what remained of the Mali Empire. So now, in the mid to late 1400s, we see the emergence of Sunni Ali, legendary black man going around knocking other black men upside their head. It don't matter if you Muslim, it don't matter if you be with the ancestors, we knocking you upside the head. Now let's continue. Upon Sunni Ali's accession, the Songhai already controlled the Niger River basin from Dendi to Mima. His first major conquest was the ancient city of Timbuktu, controlled by the Tuaregs since the Malian retreat a few decades earlier. In addition to external enemies, Sunni Ali fought campaigns against the Fulani of Messina and other nomadic peoples raiding within his borders. His main capital was Gao, but he was also based at Kukia, Kabara, and Sinderma at different times depending on where he was campaigning. Sunni Ali ruled over both urban Muslims and non-Muslims at a time when the traditional coexistence of different beliefs was being challenged. His adherence to African animism, or I guess African spirituality, while also professing Islam, leads some writers to describe him as outwardly or nominally Muslim. Now, basically what they're saying here is Sunni Ali was only a Muslim for, I guess, political reasons, or maybe just for appearances, right? So outwardly, out in the street, I appear to be Muslim, but, behind closed doors, I'll be with the ancestors, right? I'll be pouring libations. That's basically what they're saying. Now, let's continue. Now, of course, we got to talk about Askia Muhammad I, right? Askia the Great, Askia Muhammad Touré. We got to talk about it, right? Let's get into it. Askia Muhammad was a prominent general under the Songhai ruler Sunni Ali. When Sunni Ali was succeeded by his son, Sunni Baru, in 1492, Askia Muhammad challenged the succession on the grounds that the new ruler was not a faithful Muslim. He defeated Baru and ascended to the throne in 1493, right? So Askia Muhammad, in contrast to Sunni Ali, Askia Muhammad was a devout Muslim, right? He was really about that life for real. He really was at the mosque every single day for real. He was really, getting up at 5 in the morning, yeah, for real. So his justification for the coup d'etat against Sunni Ali's son was basically saying that he was not a real Muslim, right? He a fake Muslim. He a fraud, so he cannot rule, right? So I'm going to take power because he's not a real Muslim. That was his pretext for his, rebellion against the government and taking power in the coup d'etat. Now let's continue. The Battle of Anfal was fought between the troops of rebel general Askia Muhammad and Sunni Baru, the legitimate ruler of the Songhai Empire, in 1493, outside the capital of Gao on the upper Niger. Despite being outnumbered, Askia's troops won the day. The victory of Askia Muhammad ended the Sunni dynasty. So now this is the end of the Sunni dynasty, Sunni Ali and his lineage. So now the rise of the Askia dynasty in the Songhai Empire. Now let's continue. While Sunni Ali had been a warrior, Askia Muhammad was above all a statesman. He set up an efficient administration of the regions conquered by his predecessor. He began by dividing Songhai into provinces and placed each under a governor. A standing army and a fleet of war canoes were organized under a command of a general and an admiral. Moreover, Askia Muhammad created the positions of Director of Finance, Justice and Interior, Protocol, Agriculture, Waters and Forests, and the tribes of the white race, the Moors and the Tuaregs, who at the time were vassals of the Songhai and furnished them with squadrons. Dawood was one of the many sons of Askia Muhammad, the first ruler of the Askia dynasty. Under his rule, the Songhai economy thrived and developed a profoundly Islamized society, with the government promoting trade, education, and literacy. Dawood and his brothers received a good Islamic education. Beginning with his father's deposition in 1528, the Songhai Empire was shaken by a series of succession disputes until his brother Askia Ishak I was peacefully elected Askia in 1539. Dawood was appointed as the ruler over the western half of the empire. When Askia Ishak I was on his deathbed in 1549, close allies summoned Dawood from Tinderma so that he could be in Gao at the moment of succession. Now, after Askia Muhammad took power in the coup d'etat, what came after him was basically a lot of political instability, right? A lot of civil wars, a lot of different factions battling for power. But when his son Dawood came to power, he kind of brought some stability back to the region. He brought some stability back to the kingdom after a long time of instability. But unfortunately, even after Dawood, after Dawood passed away, a lot of instability came back to the kingdom just until the Moroccans invaded at the end of the 1500s and destroyed the kingdom altogether. Now let's continue. Stability, security, and religion were some of the main focuses for the Askia. Dawood used strategic marriages to promote loyalty and unity, both political and religious, on the part of vassal chiefs, religious leaders, and the merchants. He established branches of the government treasury in the provinces as well as public libraries to promote literacy and Islamic education. He also refurbished numerous mosques, notably the 3 constituent mosques of the University of Timbuktu. Now, as we can see, Dawood, he was one of the great ones, right? One of the great kings. Now let's continue. The 1558 attack on Mali concluded with the marriage between Dawood and the Mansa's daughter. He also brought large numbers of cast artisans from Mali to Gao. Now, as you can see, Dawood going around smacking black men upside their head, smacking other black men upside their head, taking their daughters. Dawood was just going crazy, establishing architecture and infrastructure and centers of learning and commerce. Dawood was definitely one of our great black men. One of our great black men. Shout out to Dawood, right? Now let's continue. The Songhai army under Dawood failed to modernize by adopting firearms and relied on spears, arrows, and guerrilla warfare. Now, as someone who has studied, the history of the black man extensively, this is not the first time that I've heard this, right? In terms of having access to modern military technology, but preferring to stick to your traditional styles of warfare, right? Where the firearms are coming into style, right? The firearms are coming into the field of battle, and the cannons and all this different type of artillery, but you rather stick to the sword and the dagger. I heard a similar story with Shaka Zulu, right? Shaka Zulu could have revolutionized his army by introducing a different type of artillery, but he was like, man, forget all that, bro. I want to walk up to the enemy up close in close combat and stick a dagger in his chest. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that, because to me, I believe that is the black man's true style of warfare. But at the time, when the enemies are coming in with, cannons and muskets and arquebuses and all this other different type of, artillery, they're firing a shot from like 50 feet away and they're killing us. It's like, goddamn, bro, we can't walk up to the gunfight with a dagger. Now, of course, back in the days of, close combat fighting, sword and a dagger, that was when the black man was dominant, because we were able to showcase our physical capability, our strength, our agility, our speed, and all different type of genetic advantages that we had. But once you enter, the cannons and the muskets and the machine guns into the equation, that changes things, right? That changes everything. So, on that part, yeah, black men were very arrogant back in the day. Some of our forefathers were very arrogant. They believed that they didn't need a gun. They believed that they didn't need a rifle. I'm gonna come to the gunfight with a dagger. And they really thought they were gonna reign victorious, right? You cannot bring a dagger to a gunfight. If I got a dagger and he got a handgun, if he got a rifle, if he got a musket, if he got a cannon, it's over. Let's continue. In 1556, troops of Muhammad al-Sheikh, the Sultan of Marrakesh, captured the extremely lucrative and economically important salt mines of Tagaza, but then withdrew. Soon after his accession in 1578, Sultan Ahmad al-Mansur of Morocco demanded the tax revenues from the salt mines. Askia Dawood responded by sending a large quantity of gold as a gift. The generosity amazed al-Mansur, and relations improved for a time, but the bribe signaled a weakness. Now, Ahmad al-Mansur, the Sultan of Morocco, as you can see, take a look up on the screen, he was the one that actually launched the invasion that actually destroyed the Songhai Empire altogether, right? As you can see, this half-breed with an Arab father destroyed the Songhai Empire, right? And as you can see, Askia Dawood actually tried to open friendly diplomatic relations with Ahmad al-Mansur, even sending him, like they said, a large quantity of gold as a gift, between brothers. And that actually reminded me of a comment that I seen in my comment section. Take a look up on the screen. The history of the end of the Songhai Empire always pains me. The Songhai were too focused on their southern borders, thinking that their biggest threats were the other black men who were not Muslim. Then, during the reign of this coward, al-Mansur, they got stabbed in their back by their so-called brothers, and that was the end of the biggest empire established on the continent. Now, Ahmad al-Mansur, the same man who was just given a large quantity of gold by Askia Dawood as a gift, he was the same one who years later down the line, he would launch an attack, an invasion, and destroy the Songhai altogether, like I said. But you see, he was given the red carpet treatment by Askia Dawood, the same Askia Dawood that launched several military attacks against the Mali Empire. Now, by this time in the 1500s, the Mali Empire had already declined in power and prestige. Like nobody, like it was over for the Mali Empire at this time. They were in a weakened state. They were in a completely weakened state. The power was over. The dominance of the Mali Empire by this time, it was over. So there was no point for Askia Dawood to be going crazy on the Mali Empire, but he didn't give a damn, right? He was launching attacks. I think he sacked the capital of Mali in the 1550s. He was just going crazy against the black men in Mali. But when it came to his fellow, Muslim brother in the north, up in Morocco, he was sending them gold. It was lovely. It was friendship, right? But that same Moroccan came down years later and destroyed the kingdom. But meanwhile, you had all the smoke for the black men next door, for the black men in Mali, right? You was going crazy, sacking the city, sacking the capital city, right? But it was all love for the Muslims from up north, right? And even though I got a lot of respect for Askia Dawood as an administrator, as a leader, as a ruler, as a visionary, as a very highly intelligent black man, I have to admit, in this case, religion was his weakness. Because just like the brother said in the comment, they were so focused on defending themselves against the other black men that they let their guard down around the Arabs coming down from up north, right? Let their guard down, from them boys up north with the Arab fathers, and that was our downfall. That was our downfall. Let's continue. Dawood is described as an eloquent and magnanimous leader who was feared and respected, but also could be a practical joker. He was then renowned for his devotion to Islam. He was well versed in Islamic law and memorized the Quran, and he respected and donated generously to Islamic scholars in Timbuktu. Nevertheless, pre-Islamic beliefs remained influential in Gao and other weakly Islamized parts of the empire. Now, as you can see, Askia Dawood was definitely one of the great ones, definitely one of the great black men of his time. We need to resurrect, this energy of our forefathers, man. We need to resurrect the energy of Sumaru Kante, Sunni Ali, Askia Dawood. We got to resurrect the intellectual capacity of Askia Dawood, the warrior energy of Sumaru Kante, the administrative capacity of Sunni Ali, Askia Muhammad. We need to resurrect that, man. Let's continue. Now, Askia Ishak II was the ruler of the Songhai from 1588 to 1591. He commanded the Songhai force at the Battle of Tondibi, where he was defeated by the Saadian forces of Morocco, who subsequently destroyed the empire. Now, like I said, the same ones that Askia Dawood had sent that large amount of gold to as a gift, the same ones that came down and marched on the kingdom and destroyed the territory. Now, let's continue. The 4,000-man force under the Islamicized Spaniard Judar Pasha crossed the Sahara Desert, arriving on the Niger on February 28, 1591. Though Ishak assembled more than 40,000 soldiers to meet the Moroccans, his army fled the enemy's gunpowder weapons at the decisive Battle of Tondibi in March 1591. Ishak had the capital of Gao evacuated, while Judar soon seized and looted along with the trade centers of Timbuktu and Jenne. The Askia sued for peace, but in response, Al-Mansur sent reinforcements and replaced Judar with Pasha Mahmud, a more aggressive commander. Pasha Mahmud defeated the Songhai again at the Battle of Zanzan on October 14th, forcing Ishak to flee to Dendi, where he was soon deposed and sent into exile in Gurma. He attempted to find refuge in the town of Bilanga, one of the towns he had campaigned against during his reign, and was killed in April 1592 by a vengeful mob. Now, that was the end of the Songhai Empire. And you could say at this point as well, this marked the beginning of the end of the black man's wealth, dominance, and prestige as a global power when it came to international affairs. And you could say the Songhai Empire fell for a variety of reasons, right? A lot of infighting at the time. Also, a lot of disunity amongst black men in terms of, for example, Askia Dawood waging war upon his neighbors, sacking the capital city of Mali, while trying to establish friendly relations with other nations far away like Morocco. That don't make no sense. You would think that you would try to establish friendly relations with your neighbors first, but no, you waging war on a black man next door, but you sending gold to Ahmad al-Mansur way far away in Morocco. What's going on with you, bro? And when you have a powerful centralized state like Songhai that falls and crumbles into a bunch of smaller fragmented pieces, all you end up with is more conflict and instability, because all these little smaller fragmented states are trying to establish their own supremacy, their own hegemony, right? They're all battling for power. You had this one centralized state that covered multiple modern day nations, now all destroyed and fragmented into smaller states, all battling for power. And then, of course, with the collapse of the Songhai, what came along with that? The black man lost control of the trade routes, the same trade routes we controlled for centuries and centuries, the trade routes that were the source of our wealth and prestige, the trade routes that had them boys talking about us all the way in the Middle East, the trade routes that made us famous around the world, the trade routes that made us the source of envy around the world. When the Songhai fell, we lost control of our trade routes, bro. We lost control of the trap. We lost control of the trap, bro. So once you combine all these factors, powerful centralized state destroyed into smaller fragmented states, all battling for power and supremacy, the entire region was sent into a cycle of instability, right? And at the same time, the Europeans are just now, setting their dusty feet into the continent at around the same exact time, the early 1600s, right? Late 1500s, early 1600s. The Europeans are arriving, setting up trade posts on the coast, And of course, in this environment of instability and fragmentation, many outsiders weaponize this, both the Arabs and the Europeans, to their advantage, right? Different factions battling for power. I can negotiate individually with different small factions, right? Instead of one unified force standing unified in resistance, you had a bunch of fragmented little groups battling for supremacy against each other. So you could see how this environment created the perfect breeding ground for the slave trade and the instability that came centuries and centuries to come. It was around this time the black man began to fall off, right? You see, before this time, the black man was shining. The black man was the standard. The black man was known for his wealth and his intellect and his valor, right? Our cities, they were known around the world. We controlled centers of learning and commerce. Our influence had reached every corner of the known world. They were talking about the West African kings in Europe and the Middle East. But it was around this time the black man began to fall off, right? And even though we still had our other kingdoms, in the region, our Central African kingdoms, our West African kingdoms all over the continent, right? But it was around this time though, right? The fall of the Songhai kind of marked the turning point in the history of the black man, right? Where as a collective, we began to fall off. As a collective, it just began to go downhill around this time. I don't know the exact year. I cannot tell you the exact year, but it was around this chapter in history. After the fall of the Songhai, it's marked by war, conflict, instability, black men battling for supremacy, black men at each other's throats, black men trying to destroy each other, black men selling each other into slavery. I mean, it was, bro, it was really bad after this, bro. After the fall of the Songhai, it got really ugly amongst black men, bro. It got really ugly, bro. It got really ugly, brothers, but the beautiful thing for us is we still have the opportunity to make things right. We still have the opportunity to right the ship, right? We understand what mistakes we made in the past. We understand what not to do in the future. But anyways, man, it's your boy Neferkari. That's Celine back in the building. Yes, indeed. Cash app in the description. Support the channel, man. Support the album. Peace.
Hey, get that bag, Toretto.
She embody a goddess. Know that I got it. Selling my product. Learn to evade it. Had to go take it. Gotta create it. Sunday invasion. High alert, I'm on my own. I need majority profit. Shorty with me looking perfect. She embody a goddess. She ain't worried about no paper, cause she know that I got it. They be auctioning they soul, I just be selling my product. They be trying to take my spirit, but I learned to evade it. Never purchased my respect, I knew I had to go take it. Never listened to no music, but I gotta create it. Thinking about my mother continent, that's under invasion. They don't know it by myself, I'm shedding so many tears. And we talking about 2000, ain't no 400 years. Been at war since they pulled up with Alexander the Great. I'm the son of Dessalines, don't never call me no slave. I'm the son of King Shabaka, call me Young Tantamani. Aim the target at your head and then I dance on your body. My whole family got Mercedes, I might get a Bugatti. Since a youngin' doing business, I don't work for nobody. Since a youngin' doing business, I don't work for the ops. Stacking money to the ceiling till I sit on the top. Now she tryna ride my wave, I'm taking pics on the yacht. Now she tryna get inside, cause I be dropping the top. Now she tryna have my baby, I got hustle genetics. Had to block her out my phone before I later regret it. Had to block her out my phone before she tried to finesse it. Had to do it on my own and now I'm never indebted. High alert, I'm on my own, I need majority profit. Shorty with me looking perfect, she embody a goddess. She ain't worried about no paper, cause she know that I got it. They be auctioning they soul, I just be selling my product. They be trying to take my spirit, but I learned to evade it. Never purchased my respect, I knew I had to go take it. Never listened to no music, but I gotta create it. Thinking about my mother continent, that's under invasion.